I want you to picture something. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. You wake up, walk to your desk, and the laptop you spent 3 summers working back-to-back jobs to buy, the one with your coursework, your project files, your entire academic life on it, is gone. The desk is empty. There's a severed power cord on the floor, still plugged into the wall. The charging brick is just lying there, like a loose thread where something used to be. You walk downstairs. Your brother is sitting on the couch with an energy drink, one leg crossed over the other, smirking at his phone. Your parents are in the kitchen pouring coffee, completely unbothered. You look at your brother. You look at your parents. And your mother turns around and says, hand already waving before the words are even out, "Oh, come on. He just needed a little extra cash for the weekend. It's a prank. Stop being so dramatic. We'll help you buy a cheap one next month." You don't scream. You don't cry. You don't throw anything. You check your watch. You look your brother in the eyes. And you say 2 words. Understood. And then you go back upstairs, close your bedroom door, and you go to work. Not the work they were expecting. Not begging, not negotiating, not sending long emotional texts that were going to get ignored anyway. A different kind of work. The kind that ends with flashing blue and red lights outside your front door at dinner time. This is that story. And if you have ever been pushed to your absolute limit by family members who protect a thief instead of you, you need to hear how this one ends. Before we get into the trail of evidence that brought the police to our front door, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you believe that family loyalty should never mean covering up a crime, like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand what that laptop actually was. Because if I just say, my brother stole my laptop, you might picture some basic home computer that could be replaced at an electronics store over the weekend. That was not this laptop. It was a high-end customized workstation. The kind that doesn't come pre-built off a shelf. The kind that my specific data analysis and engineering program required, not suggested, required, because of the processing power needed for the software we ran. We're talking about a machine built for large-scale computation. The specifications were listed in the program enrollment documents. Without it, I couldn't complete assignments. I couldn't run simulations. I couldn't submit lab work. I had worked 3 separate summer jobs to pay for it. I want you to sit with that for a second. 3 summers. Not 1 job per summer, 3 jobs running at the same time, one summer after another. Early morning shifts before the afternoon shifts. Weekend doubles. Saying no to trips, to hangouts, to the kind of easy summers that other people my age were having, because I had a specific number I needed to hit, and that number didn't move just because I was tired. I saved every receipt. I tracked every deposit. I knew the exact date I could finally place the order. And when it arrived, when I pulled it out of the box and set it on my desk for the first time, it wasn't just a piece of technology. It was proof. It was evidence that working towards something quietly and stubbornly, without anyone else's help, actually produces a result. I registered it with my university the week I got it, under their asset protection program for students in federal STEM grant tracks. I'll come back to why that detail matters enormously. Now let me tell you about my brother. My brother is 2 years older than me. He has never held a job for longer than 3 months. He has never paid a bill. He once drove my parents' car into a concrete pillar backing out of a parking lot, and my parents told the insurance company it was an animal collision. He once borrowed money from a relative to invest in something he could never clearly explain, lost all of it, and my parents quietly repaid the relative and told everyone it was a gift. None of this was ever discussed. None of it was ever addressed directly. It was always, and I mean always, softened, reframed, minimized, or simply absorbed by whoever was standing closest. In our house, there was a word for that. The word was family. As in, we don't do that to family. As in, family protects each other. As in, he made a mistake, but he's family. What that word actually meant, in practice, was this: he could do almost anything, and the people around him would find a way to make it someone else's problem to manage. I had understood this about my family for a long time. What I had not understood, until that morning with the empty desk and the severed power cord, was exactly how far it went. Stealing my laptop wasn't impulsive. He didn't grab it in a moment of panic. He did it at 2 a.m, while I was asleep. He walked into my room in the dark, unplugged it, and carried it out. And then he went to bed. And slept. And when I came downstairs and the truth was sitting right there in the open, my missing laptop, his smirk, his energy drink, my parents' first instinct was not to be angry at him. It was to manage me. Here's where I need to tell you something that my brother did not know. That my parents did not know. That almost nobody knew. Because the laptop was partially funded through a federal university STEM grant, it was enrolled in the university's asset tracking program. This wasn't optional. It wasn't a setting I had turned on manually. It was a condition of the grant. The machine came with an active, hardwired remote tracking system and a biometric security log. What that means in plain language is this. Every time someone attempted to open or log into that laptop, the built-in webcam took a photograph. A high-definition, time-stamped photograph. And that photograph was uploaded automatically to a secure university dashboard that I could access from my phone. My brother walked into my room at 2 a.m. and took my laptop. At 2:14 a.m., he opened the screen in his bedroom to try to get into it. The camera took his picture. It was a clear, well-lit, unmistakable photograph of my brother's face, looking directly into the screen, at 2:14 a.m. I found it when I went upstairs and opened my phone. I sat on the edge of my bed. I looked at it for a long time. And then I opened the GPS tracker. By 9:30 a.m., the hardware was no longer in my brother's bedroom. The GPS placed it inside a business called Apex Pawn and Jewelry, approximately 4 miles from our house. He had already sold it. He had taken it to a pawn shop the same morning, before the family had even finished their coffee. I sat there for a moment with my phone in my hand, looking at the map pin sitting right on top of that pawn shop address. And I thought about my mother's voice saying, "It's a prank." And I thought about my brother's smirk. And I thought about 3 summers. And I got up. I got dressed. And I did not go downstairs. I went to the police station. I want to be clear about something before I walk you through what happened next. This is not a story about revenge. I did not wake up that morning wanting to ruin my brother's life. I did not sit on my bed and plot something out of anger. Anger had nothing to do with what I did next. What I did next was simply logical. Someone had committed a crime. I had evidence of that crime. There was a legal process designed specifically for this situation. I followed it. That's it. That's the whole strategy. It was not clever. It was not dramatic. It was just the decision to treat a felony like a felony, instead of treating it like a family inconvenience that needed to be quietly managed by the person it happened to. I drove to the local police precinct. I asked to speak with a detective. I sat down and I laid out everything I had, in order, clearly. The serial number of the laptop. The original purchase receipts. The university asset registration documents. The screenshot of the GPS location showing the laptop inside Apex Pawn and Jewelry as of 9:30 a.m. And the photograph, the time-stamped, high-definition photograph from the security log, taken at 2:14 a.m., of my brother's face on the screen of my stolen laptop. The detective looked at everything. He looked at the GPS pin still sitting on the pawn shop. He looked at the photo. He looked back at me. He said, "This is very thorough." I said, "I know. Here is the detail that changed everything, and I mean legally changed everything. Because that laptop had been partially funded through a federal university STEM grant, it wasn't just my personal property. It was partially classified as restricted institutional property. Stealing it and selling it didn't just cross the line into larceny, it crossed the line into felony theft of grant-funded institutional equipment. My brother had not stolen a laptop. He had stolen federal property. The detective explained this to me carefully. He said the university's legal department would be notified automatically because of the grant designation. He said that once the university was involved, the decision to pursue or drop charges was no longer entirely mine to make. The institution had its own obligations. I want to be honest with you about what I felt when he told me that. Part of me felt the weight of it. Because whatever else my brother is, he is still the person I grew up with. Still the face across the dinner table for my entire childhood. The legal system doesn't feel that. It doesn't have a childhood. It just has statutes. But then I thought about 3 summers. And I thought about the smirk. And I thought about my mother's hand already waving before she'd even heard the full sentence. And I gave the detective everything he needed. I want to tell you what I did not do when I got back to the house that afternoon. I did not tell anyone what I had done. I did not warn my brother. I did not pull my parents aside and give them a heads up. I did not send any messages. I did not make any speeches. I came home. I made myself something to eat. I sat in my room. I did my coursework on my phone, which was slow and frustrating, but I did it. My mother knocked on my door in the early afternoon and asked if I was ready to let this go. She said she and my father would sit down with my brother and have a serious conversation. She said she was sure he would come around. She said she understood I was upset, but that making a big thing out of this would hurt the whole family. I said, I appreciate you coming to talk to me. She took that as agreement. It wasn't. I went back to my coursework. I need to ask you something, because this is the part of the story that most people find the hardest. Watching the people who raised you stand between you and justice for something that was done to you, that is a specific kind of pain that's hard to put words to. Have you ever had to choose between protecting a toxic family member and protecting your own future? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to hear it. That evening, my family sat down for dinner as if it were any other Tuesday. My mother had made a full meal. My father was at the head of the table. My brother was talking about going out with his friends later, which friends, where they were going, what time he'd be back. My mother was nodding, smiling, serving food, completely at ease. Nobody mentioned the laptop. Nobody mentioned the conversation from the morning. As far as the 3 of them were concerned, it was over. I had been upset, I had gone to my room, I had come back downstairs, and the family had absorbed the incident the way it always did, by simply moving past it without looking at it directly. I sat at the table. I ate. I listened to my brother talk about his plans for the evening. And at approximately 6:45 p.m., there was a knock at the front door. Not a doorbell. A knock. The kind that doesn't sound like a neighbor or a delivery. My father pushed back his chair, annoyed at the interruption. He walked to the door with his napkin still in his hand. He opened it. 2 uniformed officers and a plainclothes detective were standing on the porch. My father's tone shifted immediately, that specific shift from irritation to a confused, cautious kind of stillness that happens when authority appears somewhere you weren't expecting it. The detective introduced himself. He said they were there regarding a reported theft and the recovery of stolen property from a local pawn establishment. He said they had a warrant to question a resident of the household. My father stepped back. The 3 of them walked in. I was still at the dinner table. I had not moved. The detective walked into the dining room and looked at my brother. He said his name. He asked him to stand up. The smirk was gone. My mother stood up immediately. Her voice went high and fast, the voice she used when she was about to manage a situation. This is a family matter. It was a misunderstanding between siblings. There's no need for any of this. We were going to handle it ourselves. The detective reached into his jacket and produced a printed sheet of paper. He set it on the table where everyone could see it. It was the pawn shop's transaction log from 9:45 that morning. My brother's driver's license scan. His signature. A photograph of the workstation sitting on the counter next to the transaction receipt. Pawn shops are required by law to log the ID of every person who sells them property. Every transaction. Every time. My brother had handed over his driver's license at 9:45 a.m. and signed his name on a form next to a description of a stolen laptop. The room was very quiet. My mother looked at the paper. She looked at my brother. She looked at the detective. And the thing I noticed, the thing I have thought about many times since, is that she did not look at me. Not once. Not in that moment. My brother's arms were pulled behind his back. The officer with him was calm and professional about it, no dramatics, no force. Just the mechanical, practiced movement of someone doing a routine part of their job. The handcuffs clicked shut. My mother was still talking. Her voice was escalating, running through every version of the argument she had. It was a misunderstanding, he was going to return it, this was excessive, this would ruin everything. The detective listened politely and said nothing that agreed with her. My brother said nothing. His face had gone completely flat. I stayed at the kitchen counter, arms crossed, and I watched the whole thing without saying a single word. They led him out through the front door, down the porch steps, and into the police cruiser. The red and blue lights were on in the driveway. The neighbors were going to notice. There was nothing to manage about that. My mother was standing in the doorway. My father turned around. He was shaking. Not with sadness, with rage. Directed at me. How could you do this to your own blood? You've ruined his life. You called the police on your own brother. Over a laptop. How could you? I picked up my car keys from the counter. I looked at him. And I said. I didn't steal anything. I didn't pawn anyone's future. He did. You called it a prank. I called the police. I walked out. The door closed behind me. The house behind me was silent in a way it had never been before. Not the comfortable quiet of a normal evening. The silence of a room full of people who have just run out of things to say. I sat in my car for a few minutes. I didn't go anywhere yet. I just sat there. The police cruiser pulled away from the curb. I started the car and drove. 3 months later, this is where everything stood. The university's legal department did not drop the charges. They could not. The grant designation meant they had a legal obligation to pursue the matter regardless of what any individual involved wanted. This was explained clearly to my parents when they contacted the university directly to ask for leniency. The university's response was a formal letter that I am told used the phrase, Federal Property Protocol, more than once. My brother pleaded out. He accepted a deal that resulted in a felony mark on his permanent record, significant fines, and a period of community service. His name is now in a system he cannot undo, tied to a crime that will appear on every background check he ever faces for the rest of his adult life. I did not celebrate that. I want to be clear about that. I am not going to sit here and tell you I felt nothing when I found out the final outcome. It was complicated. It is still complicated. He is still the person I grew up with, and I am not made of stone. But I also know that I did not put him in that position. He did. And the people who had the power to stop it, who could have, at any point in the previous 2 years of bailing him out and absorbing his consequences, had made a series of choices that led to that driveway. I just stopped being one of the people who absorbed it for him. My parents did cut off contact. Not dramatically, my family doesn't do drama for long. More like a gradual withdrawal. Phone calls that stopped coming. A Christmas gathering I wasn't told the details of until after it happened. A general coolness that communicated, without anyone saying it directly, that I had done something the family was not going to forgive quickly. I want to tell you that this hurt. Because it did. No matter how clearly you understand why something is happening, being shut out by the people you grew up with carries a specific weight that logic doesn't fully remove. But here is what was also true. 3 weeks after everything happened, I was offered a research assistantship through my department. It came with a monthly stipend, a place in a funded project, and a workspace on campus. I applied for student housing and got it, a small apartment close to the university, funded almost entirely by the assistantship income. I moved out within the month. Not in anger. Not to make a point. Just because the opportunity was there, and I was ready for it, and the house I was living in had shown me clearly what it was. About 2 months after the arrest, a package arrived for me at the department office. It was from the university's equipment program. Inside was a replacement workstation, issued directly by the department, under the asset program, as part of the resolution of the theft case. I carried it to the university library. I found a quiet corner table, the kind with good light and a power outlet and enough space to spread out. I set it up. I opened it. The library around me was peaceful. Students working. The low sound of pages turning, keyboards clicking, someone nearby writing something by hand in a notebook. The particular calm of a place designed entirely for the purpose of people building towards something. I looked at the screen for a moment before I opened anything. And I thought about what I know now that I didn't fully know before all of this happened. I know that waiting for toxic people to treat you fairly is not a strategy. It is a way of handing them your timeline. They will take as long as they need, because it costs them nothing to make you wait. I know that the law, when you use it correctly, does not care about family dynamics. It does not care who the golden child is or how many times a person has been bailed out before. It just looks at what happened, and what the evidence shows, and what the statutes say. That even-handedness, which can feel cold, is sometimes the only clean thing available. And I know that the silence after you stop letting people use you, the silence that comes when you pick up your keys and walk out the door and the house goes quiet behind you, that silence is not loneliness. It does not feel the way I expected it to feel. It feels like air. It feels like a room where nothing is being managed anymore. It feels like finally being somewhere safe. So that's the story. The whole thing. The 2 a.m. theft. The smirk over the energy drink. The photograph the laptop took of the person who stole it. The pawn shop receipt with his signature on it. The knock at the door at dinner time. The click of the handcuffs. And the library, 2 months later, with a new machine and a window and a little bit of hard-earned quiet. I'm not going to tell you that what I did was easy. Calling the police on someone you share a family with is not easy. Sitting across a dinner table from people who are managing you and saying nothing while you wait for the law to do what it's designed to do, that is not easy. Moving into a small apartment alone, knowing that the people who raised you are disappointed in you for refusing to absorb someone else's crime, that is not easy. But here is what I will tell you. The moment you stop letting people use the word family as a reason to destroy you, something shifts. You stop spending energy managing other people's consequences. You stop shrinking yourself to make room for someone else's chaos. You stop being the person in the equation who is expected to lose quietly and be grateful for the privilege. And the space that opens up when all of that weight is gone, that space is yours. You can build in it. You can breathe in it. You can sit in a university library on a Tuesday afternoon with a workstation in front of you and a funded research project and an apartment with a key that only you have, and you can feel, for the first time in a long time, like the story you're living is actually yours. Protect your path. That's the whole lesson. When you finally stop letting people use family as an excuse to take from you, the silence that follows isn't lonely. It's safe. If this story gave you something, if it reminded you that you are allowed to protect your own future, share it with someone who needs to hear it right now. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And leave me a comment. Tell me your version of this story. I'm listening.